Mpumalanga taxi boss Ferrari Sibanyoni has been giving the Madlanga Commission insight into his relationship with senior police officials. He's spoken about businessmen that he interacted with and other influential figures as well, as this inquiry examines allegations of organized crime as well as the criminal infiltration of the taxi industry as well. And as you've heard previously, Sibanyoni has been questioned about his interactions with a number of prominent figures, including the late taxi boss, that's Jotham Msibi, who's a businessman, and as well as Stephen Mutsumi and Vusimuzi Kat Matala as well. But his evidence has also focused heavily on his dealings with the senior members of the police. Sibanyoni says he does not know General Sibia, but told the commission that he did meet with former KZN police boss, or rather the current police boss in KZN, that is Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. He says that the meeting between the pair was also linked to tensions within the taxi industry, and that he also raised a number of concerns and cases with the Mkhwanazi as well. And according to Sibanyoni, there was a subsequently movement on some of those cases, also suggesting that his engagement with senior police leadership did, at least in his view, produce some action. But perhaps one of the more significant aspects of his testimony today is his claim that he had also raised concerns about the infiltration or the criminal infiltration of the taxi industry as well by criminal gangs. Also speaking there in the latter about Izinkabi as well, saying that he did raise that matter with the police minister, the former police minister, that is Begicel. And Sibanyoni says he felt that those concerns were effectively shrugged off or were not entertained by the former police minister. And that also raises important questions for this commission, particularly about whether authorities were aware of these alleged criminal networks which were operating within the taxi industry, and when those concerns were brought to their attention and what action was actually taken after that. And his testimony also providing the commission with a picture of the relationship between people operating in the taxi industry. We've also heard about businessmen and law enforcement officials. But let's get more right now. Our senior reporter, that's Canny Maphanga, she joins us right now to give us all the latest at the Madlanga Commission. Canny, what was the most significant thing to come out of Sibanyoni's testimony today, at least in your view?
Well, good afternoon to Nhlanhla and to the viewers at home. Well, certainly we saw Mr. Sibanyoni just wrap up his testimony, but he will return for the more probing questions at the end of September. And essentially what he's done in his evidence is explain the relationship between the late Jotham Msibi, because it was believed or alleged that Joe Sibanyoni may have been part of this alleged Big Five cartel, and that there was a subsequent fallout between the pair, and the pair had separated in terms of those operations. But seemingly what we get is an understanding of the relationship between the pair, and then what informed the fallout in the COVID-19 period, where he alleges that there were attempts on his life, and he had confronted Msibi about these attempts on his life, and that led to this pair never speaking again with respect to their relationship. But what he then alleges after that is what paints an interesting picture about the dynamics and what seemingly was taking place at the farm, because I think that evidence at the very least confirms the allegation that there was this farm where you would see certain high-ranking cops, individuals, business persons, etc., meet at that farm, and that is where they would have the conversations, the dealings, the meetings, etc. And he confirms that a majority of the people, the persons of interest before the probe, are people that he met at the farm of Mr. Msibi. But he says that after that relationship fell out, he saw Mr. Msibi surround himself with people that he refers to as Izinkabi, which is a term for hired hitmen, if we could put it that way. And he names alleged members, Katiso Katie Mulefe and Vusimuzi Kat Matala, as the so-called hitmen in that regard. And he attributes that linking to the kind of environment that surrounded him. And he says that because of the fact that the two were in a confrontation, and that meant that he was now deliberately arming himself with significant security, he links those two events and says that that space was allegedly a target towards him. But he doesn't doesn't leave the allegations there in terms of the farm and the so-called activities of the alleged Big Five. He adds further evidence, which is quite serious for alleged cartel member Katiso Katie Molefe, because he states under oath that allegedly Molefe had moved criminal activities to the farm of Mr. Sibi, and in the main what he's talking about is alleged drug-related activities. However, when he's called upon to give substantiation to these particular allegations, you see him draw back from this particular task, let's put it that way, of naming individuals in terms of what he could use to substantiate, or rather what the commission could use to test these allegations against Katiso Katie Molefe and Kat Matala that he makes. He also circles back to Molefe by stating that because they were in this climate where there was a so-called alleged target on him, he attributes the attempt on his life and the ballistics evidence in that regard, and he circles it back to Molefe because he says that the same firearms that were used in an attempt on his life were allegedly used in the murder of DJ Somebody and the attempted murder of DJ Fetty. So a lot of allegations are circling back to one individual, and then of course he links the activities of what was taking place in Mamelodi at the time, where he says that people were just dying, people surrounding Matlala were just dying, and he attributes that to some form of a target against him. And he alleges all of this without giving too much to the commission. And what is to read from that particular evidence is that either he has no knowledge of what was taking place, but I'm not sure that that would be plausible in this regard, because he himself admits that he had a long relationship with Mr. Msibi, and he himself has been to the farm and met many of these persons of interest through that meeting, or what he described as the command center in his statement at the farm. So it's clear from the evidence that he's given so far that he seemingly is in the know about the farm and the alleged activities and the kind of names that would have visited the farm and the kind of alleged criminal or unlawful conduct that could have taken place there. However, he is in a position where he gives those offerings about that evidence, but he doesn't want to bear the responsibility of giving out the names or the evidence that could substantiate the allegations that he makes, or put the commission in a position where they can establish the facts surrounding this particular farm. But what this evidence has done, in the very least, is that it's brought the commission closer to this alleged deep network that is the alleged Big Five, and it's quite clear through the evidence we've heard of Kat Matlala and now Mr. Sibanyoni that allegedly Mr. Msibi was at the top of that particular structure. It's whether or not the commission will be able to crack the other alleged members and what the activities of that alleged farm and the meetings and the alleged cartel was about. But through Sibanyoni, all you could get is the allegations and the fact that the farm is in existence and that these meetings did take place. But what he refuses to bear responsibility on is that substantiation to the allegations. So there is something to be said, or rather found, about this alleged Big Five and what it was allegedly conducting at the time. And I think through this fallout of Mr. Msibi and Mr. Sibanyoni, there is certain information that has come through that could be of assistance to the probe with establishing the alleged Big Five cartel. However, it appears that Sibanyoni is not telling all that he knows about the activities of the farm, perhaps because of that long-standing relationship, which also could implicate him in alleged criminal conduct. That could explain why he is reserved in that particular approach. But at the very least, there is evidence that substantiates the kind of allegations and narratives surrounding this network and the activities on the farm. It's about getting a witness who will be able to substantiate the allegations, because you can't offer information like that before the probe without being tested. And at this stage, you can't offer information such as this of an alleged criminal operation allegedly taking place at the farm, and then when you're called upon to give further evidence, Klanta, you attribute it to hearsay, or rather a late chairman. So we'll see when he returns whether or not he has further information to offer, or will he hold his cards close to his chest about this alleged network and its activities in the country. It's over to you in studio.
Canny Maphanga, a big thank you as she uncovers all the latest at the Madlanga Commission. Of course, the significance, as you've heard, of this evidence by Sibanyoni may ultimately extend beyond Sibanyoni himself. If his account can be corroborated, the question then becomes not simply whether criminal syndicates infiltrated the taxi industry, but whether authorities were warned about that infiltration and failed to act. We'll bring you more on these proceedings, of course, as we continue unpacking all the latest at the Madlanga Commission.